Hello and welcome to the third edition of our new series, Planted Unearthed. My name's Sam Peters and I'm one of the founding partners at Planted, a contemporary design show aimed at reconnecting cities with nature. As part of the Planted Unearthed series, we're exploring how design, sustainability, food and nature can combine to create cleaner, greener, better looking urban spaces. We're looking in depth at how we can reconnect with nature by speaking to some of the most innovative and respected thinkers in this field. Today, we speak to the founding publisher of Wallpaper magazine and now owner of award-winning furniture brand Another Country, Paul de Zwart. Paul, welcome to Planted Unearthed.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me on.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Paul, it seems a long time since we sat down for that coffee back in King's Cross in March.
Yeah, just on the edge of the lockdown. Seems a long time ago, doesn't it?
Definitely does. We kind of knew what was coming, but obviously didn't know exactly what things were going to look like and what this experience was going to be like. But for you, Paul, how's the whole lockdown been?
Well, I mean, like all of us, I mean, lots of different emotions, right? And business concerns as well. But I'm back in London now, but I spend most of the time in the West Country, not far from, I think, where you live yourself. And that's been very nice from the point of view of getting outside, and the weather's been great. So, it's been enjoyable on the one hand, just to have some time in your hands and to do things like, cycle a lot. But like all of us, there's some big concerns and worries about what the future holds.
And for your business, obviously you touched on there, but for Another Country, just, can you tell us a little bit about what's happened to the brand, how you see it changing in the short and medium term?
Yeah, listen, I think, our sales and our business has definitely seen a slowdown since this all kind of kicked off, but it's a mixed picture, I will say. However, online sales and retail sales have kept up, or perhaps even are slightly up, partly because the shop is probably closed, so the online is seeing a bit more traffic and sales. However, the bulk of our business is trade, so it's B2B business to designers and architects. And well, there are two sides to that. One is it's been converting more slowly, so that's missing from our income at present, but it hasn't gone away.
Mm-hmm.
So the pipeline is still there. So I think that come maybe later this summer or autumn, they hopefully will start to go forward again. But I think we're in a bit of an odd moment now, because we've had that sort of early panic, of how to work and how to set up remotely and finish off projects. And do I order? Do I not order? Do I stop? Do I keep going? What do I do? Now we're kind of through that early peak, but we don't really know yet what the future holds. And I think we're sort of in a bit of a holding pattern. So I kind of almost see the next 2 months maybe even tougher than the first two. And then maybe, we'll settle down and get a better grip on what the future holds, or at least the midterm future. And then I suspect we might see some more activity.
Another Country, I think around 10 years old now, 10 years since you've been working on this fantastic brand that you own, but it's built around sustainability. Sustainability is at its core, locally sourcing products and materials. I mean, that must have been a benefit to you as a business and longer term going forward, as supply chains have been hit so badly, I guess.
I think local businesses to some extent have suffered well, either due to staffing problems, perhaps their own supply chains were suspended, maybe even from timber to hardware. Some employees didn't want to come back to work, or perhaps fell ill and had to self-isolate. So a mixed picture. I think it does help to have a diversified supply chain, and secondly, not one, as you said, that is too far. So we predominantly manufacture in the UK and on the continent, particularly in Portugal, and more or less, I think we've carried on. Some suppliers shut down temporarily or partly, but on the whole, we've kept producing and been able to produce and supply throughout this period.
And you touched on the short-term changes to the business. I mean, in terms of the longer-term changes, clearly it's so hard to predict the future. We've all recognised that. But have you been able to sort of think longer-term about how the business may be affected, and indeed the furniture industry as a whole?
Yes, I think there are two things. Now we're nearing the end of May, so we're allowed to open non-essential shops come mid-month or mid-June. As a homewares or furniture store, I think we can open as of now in a way. So we are doing some work to our showroom to make sure it's compliant with social distancing rules. We're doing some refurbishment that perhaps was time for us to do. The showroom is 5 years old, so could do with a bit of a, floor sanding and the paint, liquid paint. But I think we are going to reopen because we have a shop front, and and if we can, we should obviously be open for business. But it won't be quite the same, obviously. So for forthcoming months, we'll do it on an appointment-only basis, maybe shorter hours. We'll staff it with 2 or 3 people. Our remote working has worked fine. I mean, we've always been a cloud-based business in terms of telephony and computers and storage. So to work remotely has been no problem at all from that perspective. And our suppliers, of course, work in their own respective, workshops. So that's been okay. But we all, not just us, but everyone depends on their clients, and they depend on their clients. So it's all down to people feeling confident to spend some money again, and going out to, or being able to go out into restaurants, and that will take time. So those clients that are in the hospitality sector will sit on their hands for some months to come, because obviously they can't operate normally. And equally, if you are in a workplace sector, or you're a company setting up an office, again, you'll be rethinking how that future looks like, and that impacts businesses, including ours, all the way down the line. So I see a mixed picture of retail sales, maybe holding up. There's definitely some trends that we're looking at very closely, and we're doing a whole thinking piece on the new workplace and the work from home situation, and see how that pans out for a business like ours. So I think we'll have to wait and see a little bit, but I hope that the year won't be a year of growth, but hopefully a year of break even and just settling a little bit, and then see what 2021 brings.
That's really interesting. I mean, it feels perhaps that some of the businesses that were already set up perhaps before the start of this lockdown to work sustainably. I mean, that very word sustainable means that I guess you're there and planning to last the test of time. I guess it feels like some of those businesses that were structured in a way you've described are going to be a bit more robust coming into this, and indeed coming out the other side.
Yeah, I think nimbleness is kind of a key thing for us. We don't produce, let's say, in far-flung markets like Asia in big batches and shipping around the world. So we are quite nimble. We make to order mainly. We carry some stock, but essentially we make to order. So we're not sitting on big warehouses with batch furniture that has nowhere to go. We are not a big team. We're around 10 people with some part-time and freelancers. So we can also adapt pretty quickly. As you mentioned yourself, our sustainability credentials, which is and has always been part of our DNA, does make sure that our practices are meant to be, as it says, sustainable. So that's from how we source and how we produce, and this made-to-order aspect is really key to that as well, because sitting on stock or obsolete stock or stock that has no customer is not particularly sustainable. So we feel that both are working practice and our ethos that underlies the business is fit for purpose, if you like. Although, of course, like everybody else, we have to adapt and sort of hold down for some time till things settle down again.
Of course, and I mean, sustainability was already high on many people's agenda before the pandemic. It felt like there was a real momentum around that. Indeed, some people complained that it was sort of omnipresent, and people were using it as a kind of means of sort of this phrase greenwashing and sort of hiding behind it. But I mean, do you see this whole movement as being even more important afterwards and even higher on people's agenda as they really start to strip it back and understand what it means?
Yes, I mean, this is obviously the big topic. This is the big elephant in the room. This is the big silver lining, possibly, if there is one, from this pandemic. Yes, we've been talking about sustainability, for years. Have we seen decisive action? Yes, but no. I mean, CO2 emissions have been rising despite the Paris Agreement. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of goodwill, grassroots level, charities, but business as usual, usually, and has been winning out. Even when we know we are at the point of our planet really suffering from our human action. So I think some businesses inevitably will think, okay, we may have to look at our practices again. I mean, I'd be amazed if the topic were not become even, more important, if you like. But it needs a different level of action. It needs a level of action we've seen with the fighting of this pandemic. You need that type of action. All out, concerted, with the public will behind you. And we've had years and years of talk, and you look at all the stats. Biodiversity is falling, CO2 emissions are rising, car sales are up, cars are bigger. And it goes on. It is ludicrous. And so maybe we can only hope and keep making the case that you can live sustainably whilst living happily and having a fulfilling life, with friends and family on this planet. They're not mutually exclusive. And I think people maybe will think twice, possibly. I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith, I have to say. I have faith in individuals because, you need people that and you reinforce each other's views. You feel good about sharing those views with like-minded people. But the broader picture is not that. The broader picture is Bolsonaro, it's the Australian Prime Minister, is Trump, it's a China that still needs to focus on bring up the citizens from a low-level living standards. So the different priorities among very, very big and important nations around the world. And so I think, yes, we'll keep talking about it, but I think we need action, and we need leadership. And particularly leadership from the top, because change will come from the bottom up too slowly, I think, in order to tackle the challenges that we've been facing for some time.
And I've been really interested in examining this notion that perhaps the obsessive pursuit of growth in an economy is the be all and end all. I mean, is that an area that we have to look at? And particularly for the design industry, it's hard to square that circle, I guess, of saying that we produce things, we manufacture things, by very definition, we build things, and the same goes for the events industry. But how do we kind of marry those two together? A clear movement in the world of design towards sustainability. It was happening long before the pandemic happened, and you guys, another country, are one of the best examples of that. But how do we fit those together?
Well, we live in a capitalist society, and that's not going to change, I think. So, we embrace profit and profit making for the sake of the economic model that we believe works best, or, has over time come to provide the most for the most people, I guess, is the view we've taken, after centuries of different political systems and economic systems. I think, but you can adapt these things. There are lots of different models that are essentially social democratic and capitalist that work to different degrees, from taxation, to profit sharing. So I think it's a question of whether the profit motive in itself is the be all and end all, or is profit part of the picture. And I think when we all face in our businesses and in the wider market, new entrants backed by big VC capital, they've run at losses for years and decades, and if you pay no taxes when they make a profit, that's not sustainable. I mean, that kills off competition. Secondly, it doesn't put anything back in the public coffers that are so badly needed. And so I think the extremes of the model when it comes to these types of players backed with such amounts of venture capital money that themselves should be able to compete. That's not the problem. Bring it on. There's new technology, new ideas, new entrepreneurs. That isn't the issue. It's about a level playing field. So when when a deck is stacked against you as a smaller retailer that can't compete on that level, then you see that the new entrant who becomes very successful, as I said, runs at a loss, and finds ways to set up their headquarters in different jurisdiction, and hence pays no funds back into the system, the market which it sells. That is an aspect, one of many, but it's one aspect of the system perhaps it needs looking at. And I think we need well-funded public services, as we well know, whether it's health, whether it's transport, and we need people to have a safety net whereby we don't have to have 0 hours contracts all around the place. I think it's totally marriable. I mean, my business is not, yes, I run it for profit, but I not run it to maximize profit. Profit is important so you can reinvest in product and R&D and so forth, but it's not for the sake of making a profit. So, I mean, I'm not saying my model is the only or the right model, but it is a model. And I think that can be extended to lots of other businesses and sectors. So I think that is a really important part of it. So why are we in business? What is our purpose? And are we here to add value? Is it for consumer choice? Is it about producing cheap goods? Is it just for profit making? And it is obviously a very complex subject, but I do think there is room to recalibrate it.
I mean, it's something that the design industry has been talking about, and also in terms of talking about sustainability, talking about issues around things like rewilding and changing production systems and methods. I mean, why do you feel this is such an interesting space, particularly for the design industry, and why is this momentum around reconnecting with nature and living a more sort of balanced life so important in the world of design and furniture?
Well, I think there's a lot of lip service being paid, I have to say, by the industry generally. So I'm not going to say that the industry is at the forefront of this. I don't think it is, in fact, particularly the bigger players. I think designers, particularly younger designers, who obviously live in a world and have an education and surround themselves with people who probably are more open-minded towards caring for the environment and designing with sustainability in mind. They're definitely, I think, looking at the future and how to make and design differently. But a lot of established businesses, particularly the more successful ones, yes, I mean, are talking about it. They've made money not doing this for a long, long time. Do they really care? I guess they do. Do they have to? Maybe. Will money win out? Maybe yes. It's hard to say. I think there's definitely a change. But I know I speak to some people in the industry who have roles in very large organizations, and I think there is a will. I mean, I know for a fact that some big retailers are definitely looking at how they can improve their credentials and do things differently. But is it happening across the board? It's hard to say. So I think there's definitely will. I think there is a capability. But our supply chains are still in many cases, really, really long. Making locally or in the UK is not straightforward because of the overheads and the cost of labor in this country. And, and people cannot necessarily afford to buy things at a certain price. So they need affordable furniture as they do affordable clothing or affordable, other things. So I think there's space for all of this. I speak of marrying design, the industry and craft. I don't think turning back to making from coppiced timber is the way forward. Obviously, we need to find a way that we can live in the way we choose to live, but in a sustainable fashion. It can be done on an industrial scale as long as the industry behind it is set up in a way that is sustainable, and it is entirely possible. It really is, and may cost a bit more, but not to the point of becoming unaffordable.
Really interesting. I mean, in terms of this issue of greenwashing, Paul, we touched on it at the start or early on, but we've seen brands traditionally hiding behind a kind of the way they've presented themselves, in using environmentally friendly slogans and credentials and marketing campaigns to essentially hide the reality of their business. I mean, another country, I think, is clearly a brand that if you drill down all the way to the core of the business, you're going to find that you are what you say you are. But how can we ensure that notion of greenwashing and sort of hold companies and businesses to account who don't follow ethical methods of production?
Well, a company, okay, there are the three facets to this. One is the company themselves, secondly is the consumer, and thirdly is the regulator. So if a regulator says you can only do things this way, then it's quite easy. For example, why isn't all plastic recyclable? Why am I still buying chicken from an organic producer and I'm going to throw away the film that covers the box? I mean, why is it still happening? Yeah. Why is my crisp packet still not biodegradable? Why? That is a question of you do it this way or you don't do it at all. To me, it sounds really simple, but it ain't happening. Industry can obviously take a lead, and many do, and there's some, very forward-thinking big companies. And Unilever has been saying interesting things over the last, few years. But even Coca-Cola, which is one of the worst quote-unquote polluters, but they make the plastic bottle, but they don't throw it out in the street. So the consumer has to take some responsibility as well. Driving down a country road and checking out your chicken burger wrappers in your Coke bottle ain't the fault of Coca-Cola. recycle it, and they'll make a new bottle for you. So, it's consumer habits, is educating those to just behave better and more responsibly. It's companies being encouraged by shareholders and their consumers to do things better, do them well. And thirdly, regulate them. Say, yeah, be in business, make money, but don't do what you did before. And then this is how we're going to allow you to be in business and produce packaging and all the rest of it. So, it has to come. It's not the fault of one or the other, but greenwashing in itself is something that has to move on. But again, it's only from the pressure of consumer groups and their own buyers and regulators that they'll stop greenwashing, because they won't be allowed to greenwash. And that will be harder going forward, because people will call them out, And the other day, I had from a very nice local shop, I bought this pizza came in a wrapper, and I said, we love the environment. This is 80% recycled plastic. And it's like, but I couldn't recycle it. So I was like, there's something not quite adding up here. So I think it's lots of things, but I wouldn't take the consumer out of this equation, because people have to also be more responsible in how they go about consuming.
That's a fascinating take on things, Paul. Well, Paul, listen, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real interesting and informative and educational experience just chatting to you for the last 20 minutes. I think the viewers will agree we could listen to you speak for a lot longer. Sadly, that is all we've got time for in this edition. If you have enjoyed today's series of Planted Unearthed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, details of which can be found on our website, which is at www.planted-cities.co.uk. We've got more great content, more great thinkers to come in the next few weeks and months. Interviews with founders of the Green Rooms Botanical Market, Gemma and Annie Charman, and highly respected furniture designer Sebastian Cox, coming up in the next days and weeks to come. So thank you, Paul, for now. All we've got time for is to say thank you for your time. Thank you for all your wealth of information and knowledge. It's been a fascinating speak to you. And this has been Planted Unearthed.
Thanks, Sam.